This past year, the comic book industry has seen record-breaking sales. In fact, as of June 2017, there was a new record broken that hasn't been met since 1997. Given this upward trend, I wanted to get an established retail brick and mortar owner on the mic to discuss this change in the industry. So, given that record-breaking sales are happening, that would mean that retail stores are at an all-time high. Owners are making a ton of money. I mean, right? That would make sense. Well, I have Russ Bright here, owner of Mill Geek Comics out here in Mill Creek, Washington, and I'm assuming this isn't the reality of the situation.
No, not at all. These record-breaking numbers, the numbers that we're seeing here, happen to be also reported by Diamond Comic Distribution. Diamond is the largest distributor and pretty much the only distributor of comic books in North America. So if they're reporting large numbers, it just means that that's what they're selling, not what comic book stores are selling. And that's the discrepancy. Since Diamond is basically a monopoly, absolutely everything that they do is going to try and fluff their numbers to look better to the rest of the people in the country, so no one can compete with them at all whatsoever. Marvel and DC are helping hand in hand with this by publishing as many variants to as many comics as possible. When Marvel makes you chase a variant by buying 1,000 copies to get the 1 in 1,000 Todd McFarlane variant, Diamond sees 1,000 copies sold. I have 1,000 copies at my store, and if I sell 30 copies, that means 970 copies going in the trash or selling on eBay at very discounted prices.
So you see, when Diamond releases these strong numbers, it's to make their business look like, yeah, they are selling out of comics, you know? But what you don't see is on the back end at the retail location. These annual reports do not represent consumer spending. They represent what retail stores are buying from Diamond. What they don't show is what Russ just described. Comic books that don't sell in the store, comic books that end up going in the back issue bin, comic books that end up going on eBay and selling for well under cover price, and I would assume well under what you would pay for them.
Absolutely. Yep.
So how does Diamond calculate these numbers? Well, as of June 2017, we saw this record-breaking number of 8.5 million copies sold. What does that number mean? Because 8.5 million copies did not go into the hands of consumers. They went into the hands of retail locations like yours. They get this number based off of the top 300 titles that are put out that year. Mostly Marvel DC.
Yeah.
If not entirely Marvel DC Comics. And then that's the number that they represent as their success. So you would assume that comic book stores across the board are making a lot of money, but given this large problem, they're not. We saw a 4% increase in new comic book stores opening in 2017. That's a pretty big number. Unfortunately, we're still seeing an above 90% closeout rate of new comic book stores year over year.
And even with the new comic book stores that are closing at such a high rate, we have some established stores that have been around many, many years, even in the Seattle area, that are closing. Perry over at Xanadu Comics just closed after 42 years.
Yeah, and that happened, last week?
Yeah, in the last week that closed. And he's been around since the mid-'70s. We have other comic book stores that are struggling.
Now that we have you on the mic, what I'm hoping to do is discuss with the audience maybe some of the challenges the average comic book shop has to keep, not just keep its doors open, but to maintain livelihood so you don't have to work 7 days a week.
Right.
So, and aside from that, I would also like to follow up that question with maybe what can be done. How can we keep our retail stores open?
Well, first off, I like working 7 days a week because I get to do something that's fun. And that's the best part. Being a guy who owns a comic book store and reads comics is great. Don't try this at home, kids. But truthfully, when they release so many comics and so many variants, and they expect us to purchase these 2 months in advance, I just turned in orders last week for comics that will be arriving in late March and early April. So I have to assume that I know how many people are going to be buying from my boxes, or I just have to make an educated guess. There are points in time that I'll spend a few $1,000s, hoping to God that I have all of the number ones that are coming out for this. I have to plan that the Black Panther movie is coming out. I have to plan that the Infinity movie is coming out. I have to plan that Action Comics 1000 is coming out, and there are different variants for all of the above. And I have to try and figure out how to budget and make that happen at the same point in time, not losing box customers and not spending too much budget on things that won't sell on my wall.
So correct me if I'm wrong, because I do not have a retail store, but comic books, given that they are created and sold well in advance, have to be ordered how many months prior to release date?
2 months minimum, if not well before that, but 2 months minimum.
So when you see a comic book like, I don't know, Teen Titans Rebirth number 12 come out, and you see it go on eBay for $50 a month after release.
Right.
I'm assuming you don't have 100 copies of those just sitting in your shop.
No. Some stores do. Some stores will buy 100 copies of every single comic coming out just in case, and those are the ones that end up selling a lot on eBay. For the most part, I try to order as few copies of everything as possible to keep around. I don't want to go out of business because I bought 1,000 copies of Turok Dinosaur Hunter number 1.
I need to make a multiple comic Monday post on Instagram just about Turok Dinosaur number 1. And then I can say the 10 people who comment on this will get a free 5 copies of Turok number 1.
Awesome. I have a whole long box of Magnus Robot Fighter 25 at the shop as well. I could do the same.
You mentioned this already. These comic books don't get picked up. We know where they end up. They end up in the back issue bin, and they sell for less than what you paid for.
Right.
So that's coming out of your margin.
Yeah.
So aside from that, you're also ordering a ton of books for customers with a promise that they'll pick them up.
Yeah.
And based on the fact that I see posts on Instagram and on Facebook all the time talking about how important it is to come and pick up your comic books on Wednesday when they arrive, maybe can you elaborate on that?
One of the interesting things about that is that for the most part, Diamond does everything on COD. So you write them a check, and then they will cash the check 3 or 4 days later. Legally, I can't keep credit cards on file. Any store keeping your credit card on file is illegal. You can't keep any credit card information. I'm not a huge fan of keeping a deposit, and I'm not going to make people pay for comics ahead of time because comics do in fact get canceled. So for the most part, we are working on a gentleman's agreement and a handshake promise. And if someone comes in and orders 30 comics a month, I hope that they are going to show up and pay that. I have no legal recourse against them if they end up not showing up. But a lot of these stores that close are because people have forgotten to pick up their comics or something happens. My biggest request of all of my customers is that let me know. Communicate with me. Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. Stop by the store. I understand. I have kids. I have a family. I have a car. I get it. Your car broke down. Can't make it to the store. You lost your job. Can't pick up your comics. Life happens. We all understand that. Just let us know, because someone who's not picking up their comics affects me and my ability to pay for my shop, pay for my car, pay for my things, and all of the above. No one's stuff is more important than anyone else's, but as long as we're all considerate of each other, and you pick up your comics on Wednesday, we should get along just fine.
So, of all the shelf customers that you have, and we don't have to just dive into your store, just in general, based off of the network that you have and just knowing other store owners, how big of a problem is this to have shelves just get so large that it becomes a problem? Because the average comic book in 2017 sold for $3.89, basically $4. What would you say is the percentage of customers that have a shelf, not just at your store, but, if you were to guess a percentage just in general that the industry is combating for people who just let their shelves get out of hand, what would you say is like that percentage you're trying to beat?
More than 20%, honestly. The math's pretty easy to do with my shop because I have almost exactly 100 box customers. So I can tell you that I have 50 box customers that have more than 20 titles. I have 75 box customers that only pick up once a month. And I know that out of my 100 box customers, by the end of 3 months, I will have had to cancel 10 to 20 of their boxes because they haven't picked up, haven't come in, and haven't told me why they aren't able to pick up.
Interesting. So 20 titles on average per customer at a rate of roughly $4 a comic book, because that's the it's close to the average comic book sale for 2017.
Right.
Is about $4 a comic book. We're looking at roughly math $80 in sales sitting in a shelf per month. Mm-hmm. Now, if a customer doesn't pick up 1 month,
80 in sales per month per customer. That's the thing. When you have 20 customers and you're losing $1,600 a month, that's a lot of loss. Shops, yeah, that's a mortgage payment.
There you go. So there's a couple things that we've discussed that are hurting the industry. Mm-hmm. And specifically when we have the largest the largest distribution company claiming the highest record-breaking sales, we have to look at the details and what is actually hurting these stores, what's making them close down, because the goal is we want all these stores to stay open. We want more brick and mortar stores, if anything, because digital sales, although nice, are not beating comic book sales. No. And the distribution company wants these stores open. Very much so. Mm-hmm. They want to see these stores thrive. So hoping that this information getting out and us kind of talking about it, if we can remind even one person to go to their shop and say, hey, I'm going to pick up my bucks. Because if it's been, what I think of is, 1 month is bad. You have 20 people that didn't pick up their box that are $80 a pop. Mm-hmm. What I'm worried about is, what does month 2 look like? Yeah. What's month 3 look like? Because some of those people will end up paying, but I bet there's a number of them won't. What comes to mind is not just that $80 sitting on the shelf 1 month, it's that month 2 goes by, month 3 goes by. And some of these people end up paying, but that number starts growing, and I'm assuming that some of these shelves turn into long boxes. Yeah. So moral of the story, if you want your comic book store to thrive, pick up your orders.
Don't order stuff you're not going to read. Don't order porn comics.
All right, so is that how we're gonna leave this podcast? We're gonna say, don't order stuff that you don't want to read, and don't order porn comics. All right, I think that's a good place to stop here. Well, thank you so much for listening, guys. Here with Russ Bright at Millgate Comics. I'm gonna put his information in the description below. But yeah,
I have a story to tell you. So let's end it.
Well, we'll end this now, and then those who want to keep watching, we'll keep geek responsibly.
Please geek responsibly.
Thanks so much for watching today. Had a lot of fun chatting with my buddy. You can follow me at ComicTom101 on all my social media. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more comic book content like this.